Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, John from MSP. This is Ukraine War News Update for the 2nd of September 2023. A little bit later than normal. Sorry, I had to go off and watch one of my kids play football. Had to take a call in the car. So joined the match when they were 3-1 down. I was like, oh my goodness. I thought they were going to have a really good season. Anyway, they won 6-3. So hashtag lucky charm, of course. Whatever. So we'll go to where we usually start, the Frontline update segment. We're going to look at a couple of general claims here. Budanov, the head of intelligence, saying Russia transferred units of the newly formed 25th Combined Arms Army to Kupiansk direction to replace units of the 41st Combined Arms Army, which began a slow redeployment to southern Ukraine. He said, according to him, the 25th Army was previously formed in the Russian Federation as a strategic reserve, which, according to all their documents, was supposed to be brought to a combat-ready state and generally to be transferred to the front by October. You know what happened? As of now, it is completely understaffed, without training, and takes part in hostilities. And it went not to reinforce, which is interesting, but to replace the 41st, which began a slow redeployment. Now, that is hugely significant because what that means, I mean, I was calling into question the whole rationale behind these attacks in the northeastern sector as diversionary, as trying to take away Ukrainian counteroffensive resources from either Bakhmut or the south. And I was saying, well, why not commit those forces to the south to do the defending there, because you need them. So what's this going to work? And it only works if they succeed in diverting those resources. Well, it turns out that the Ukrainians were able to hold on to these areas, broadly speaking, with the existing forces they had in the area, and maybe added with some home guard and whatnot. And although the Russians are claiming some successes up here in Kupiansk area, and we'll come on to that, they have actually been beaten back where they did make some advances. In fact, in this Neyarivka area, just south of there, actually, they lost 6 tanks yesterday, as I told you. So they're taking a bit of a beating, or at least it's attritional there for them. And this then, is a bit of a problem for the Russians, because they're replacing the more experienced soldiers and seasoned soldiers up here in the northeastern sector with mobilized, with Mobics and green soldiers, if you like, and taking the more experienced and putting them down south in a slow redeployment. And it just means that whatever they are trying to do up here, they're going to have less chance of succeeding with that, because the forces they're bringing to bear here are a newly formed mobilized unit. So it's just not a good look for them. And then when we come to talk about the VDV, the paratroopers, the 76th division that was brought to Zaporizhia, Ukrainian forces have already started capturing soldiers of the 104th Regiment of the 76th. The reserves brought from Crimea about a week ago. I saw a 76th trench that was controlled by the 76th that was taken. I can't show it to you because it's inappropriate, but it just shows that actually those reserves are under the cosh already. The aim of all forces in the area is to slow down the Ukrainian advance until other regiments of the 76th arrive and are deployed. But already, they are taking losses and they are being captured. So, yeah. And then we come to look at this, which is based on, well, we go to the, okay, we go here first and then the UK Defense Intelligence. So Russia's plan to distract Ukraine's offensive may backfire. While Ukrainian forces, it says, while Ukrainian forces are successfully advancing in the south, in yellow, for weeks now, Russia's been wasting masses of troops and material attacking in Ukraine's northeast for no real gain. And that's, make of that what you will. But I think that's fairly on it. And actually, the intelligence update from the UK Defense Ministry says Ukrainian forces continue to take offensive action on the Orikhiv axis in southern Ukraine, with units reaching the first Russian main defensive line. Russian forces, primarily composed of the 58th Combined Arms Army and Russian airborne forces elements, seek to halt the Ukrainian counteroffensive whilst maintaining their own offensive on the northern axis around Kupiansk. Russian forces are likely seeking to distract Ukraine from its counteroffensive, thereby forcing it to divide its forces between Orikhiv and Kupiansk. Given that Russia has made modest gains near Kupiansk, and that's arguable, since the Ukrainian counteroffensive began in June, they're highly likely seeking to capitalize on these by continuing to resource this axis. However, Russia risks dividing its forces as it seeks to prevent a Ukrainian breakthrough. Exactly what I've been saying, which is like, why do that? You are leaving yourself weaker down here, and therefore it's more probable that Ukrainians will get a breakthrough. Anyway, going on to that southern front, so the Kupiansk front line, we have claims, or not southern, go to the Kupiansk northeastern sector. In Kharkiv Oblast, the front line remains stable around Kupiansk. So Ukraine battle map says this, and make of this what you will, but I think there has been elements of this being reported over the last few weeks. Despite Russian claims, Russian forces do not control the town of Sinkivka and are no more than a kilometer closer to the city of Kupiansk than they were at the beginning of June. In other words, some of these claims have been overblown, and we've seen counterclaims that place the Ukrainians within what Russian mappers are saying is Russian territory. Defmon says there's a lot of talk on the Russian telegrams about some great Kupiansk offensive. For me, this looks like the Russians pushed out and into the grey zone from Vilshana and established positions in the grey zone without taking Ukrainian positions. And other people saying, they haven't seen much in terms of changes in reality. So this is Sinkivka there. Defmon has that in the grey zone. But the gains that the Russians have made in these areas up north have been not about taking Ukrainian territory, but just advancing within contested areas anyway. We have Andrew Perpetua increasing the Ukrainian control up in this area, which goes against what Syriac maps, a pro-Russian mapper, has as these big Russian advances, and supposedly the northern half of Sinkivka is under Russian control, as according to Rebar. Yet Andrew Perpetua is saying, well, by the shelling analysis, which is pretty objective rather than he said, she said, we can confidently claim, and he's quite a conservative mapper, so he will change only when he's really confident, that the Ukrainians have actually made either advances or have not conceded the territory that some of these Russian sources are claiming. Okay, now let's go down to, we're pretty much going to go down to the front line in the south. I mean, there is activity all over. Well, actually, no, let's go to Bakhmut and just say a little bit about Bakhmut. So if you want to spend a couple of hours, always put it on ×2 speed for Andrew Perpetua's live streams. Because A, they're quite long, and B, there's quite a lot of pauses and slow talking. So if you like to use your time wisely, go to the cog, and I advise that for me as well. Put me on 1.5, 1.75, or at least 1.25 times speed, and you'll get through my videos quicker and content quicker. But go to the cog and do that for Andrew Perpetua's live stream for sure. Anyway, his section on what's going on south of Bakhmut is really fascinating, and it's not looking good for the Russians here. So he says that basically the Klishchivka is, it's the end of Russians being in Klishchivka pretty much now. They don't particularly control it at all. Same with Andriivka. So those two places are on the verge of bit turning over. And that Kurdyamivka and Ozarianivka are next. And he says that basically all these four will go broadly at the same time because they kind of rely on each other. He says that this, again, exactly what I've been saying the last couple of days, this rail line is the defensive line that they have to hold. And it has been broken in a number of places. So it's been broken around Andriivka. And he says up here as well that the Russians have been pushed back. And it's not looking good for the Russians around this Klishchivka axis. That they will be pushed back probably to this line here, the road that comes north to south, south to north, and goes through Opitny. It looks like that would be the next Russian defensive line. Now, what the Ukrainians do after that, they could just sit there and defend and be able to still hammer. He's saying that they are still presently able to trip Russian equipment quite successfully in this area and take out bits of kit, with ATGMs, but a lot of our precision artillery and stuff as well. So, we'll see what happens there. It's looking pretty positive for the Ukrainians to the south of Bakhmut. Obviously, there's lots more to say of all that front line around there, but this is just a quick summary segment. Okay, we're now going to go to Staromyorsky area, and what we haven't heard from this sector really for a good few weeks because they've been on operational pause, although we have heard that Priyutne, this area between Priyutne and Staromyorsky, has been flattened out. Andrew Perpetua hasn't got that yet, but there are claims that the Ukrainians have taken that. We'll see whether that definitely stands up. But now there are claims that they are in Zavitne Bezhyanya as of this morning. These are claims just coming through now. So I'll share them with you. Reportedly, Ukraine's army has entered Zavitne Bezhyanya in Zaporizhia Oblast. Actually, I think it's Donetsk still, but there you go. The Ukrainian army advanced 1.7 kilometers south of Uruzhany and recaptured the first buildings of Zavitny. So this has been geolocated in western Donetsk Oblast. Russian invasion forces are reacting with first-person view kamikaze drones on the involved mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, indicating a lack of defending forces on the ground. In other words, they're trying to fight back the Ukrainian MRAPs that are in Zavitny Bezhyanya with first-person view drones, as opposed to using troops that are there. That indicates possibly that things are tough for the troops on the ground. That is to say that the Ukrainians appear to be in this kind of area of the town. Again, going back to that geolocated imagery. So there is this river that goes through the Mokryali River. I would have thought that bridge would have been blown up, but they're obviously able to. It's not a big river in certain places here. They've obviously been able to get some vehicles across there and are in Zavitny Bezhyanya. So that is a significant change from an area that hasn't seen all that much activity for a couple of weeks. Right, then we're going to go to Robotyne, and that is to the west where it is all kind of happening. Andrew Perpetua has some further gains for the Ukrainians just around Verbove to the south, or really to the west of Verbove, between Novoprokopivka and Verbove. So what's going on there? Well, a new video surfaced of the fighting in Robotyne-Verbove sector. Russians have lost 2 tanks on the dirt road here. Dragon's Teeth of the Surovikin line can be very well seen in this video, and the Ukrainian soldiers can move at least seemingly freely on the road. So if you're just walking up and down the road taking video footage to put on social media, then hey, you're not really under a lot of pressure there. Now the video was likely taken here in a circled area in front of the possibly weaker section of the Russian main defense line. During the last few days, no new geolocated material or other verifiable information has indicated major mapping changes on the front line around there. But of course, operational security and a fog of war. So that was taken, fairly close to the tank ditch, and as you heard mentioned, you can see the Dragon's Teeth in that footage. So they are able to move fairly freely there, and that gives you some indication that they are in control of elements of the mapping there. So Bakhmut, missed that one. That was in the wrong place. Sorry. Just to say, Ukraine control up to 80% of Klishchiivka over the past few days. The Ukrainians have knocked out Russians from the central pillar to the northwest. Ukrainians advancing the buildings in the village. So actually, the Ukrainians are not just going through the south of the village, but appear to be coming in this northern area as well, where the Russians had apparently taken some ground. So we'll see how that develops. Anyway, sorry, that was in the wrong place. So, in fact, I've got everything in the wrong place at the moment. Right, Zaporizhia. Operational situation in Tokmak direction, southwest and south of Robotyne. The armed forces of Ukraine repelled several Russian counterattacks. I talked about this yesterday, how the Russians tend to counterattack and try and defend by attacking. But although it gives the Ukrainians a lot to think about, it attrits the Russians quite a lot. Fighting continues for a forest belt and a forest plantation south of Robotyne. I talked about that yesterday. That's this area here. Andrew Perpetua talks about that on his live stream as well. So again, worth listening to. The situation between Novoprokopivka and Verbove remains dynamic. Fights are in the grey zone. Fights continue near Verbove, and the armed forces of Ukraine have partial success in the area of the defensive line. Russia makes counterattacks in several directions. Okay, and then moving on. So this is from today. Some of that was from yesterday. Russian fighter Igor Guzenko, so he's, I think, the 13th, confirms that the Ukrainians are advancing in the area between Novoprokopivka and Verbove, while also moaning that the issues of which former Commander Popov, so you remember Ivan Popov was kind of disappeared, and he was making claims. He was making claims about the state of the Russian armed forces. Sorry, I had devices going off around the house there. So anyway, distracted. So this is the 13th. Igor Guzenko complaining that the Russians still don't have all the things sorted out in terms of all the complaints that we see so commonly. On the Zaporizhia front, he says, near the village of Verbove, there are Ukrainian advances. The foothold between Novoprokopivka and Verbove is successfully expanding. The former commander of the 58th Army, Popov, keeps in touch with his former subordinates on the ground and states that all the problems that he reported in his report have only worsened and no one is taking any action to eliminate them. I fully confirm this information, says the 13th. The fact that there was a breakthrough in that area I knew a week ago. I dared to state the fact that crests are slowly but surely advancing, so that there is a solid goiter on TV. Nothing. Soon the veil will fall. In other words, they're not kind of talking about this in Russian propaganda channels. What they're thinking out there, I personally do not understand. Agree, hope. It certainly won't work on our terms. And then, if we move to the west, so that is, as we'd imagine, there will be gains for the Ukrainians, I assume, in these areas. They are fighting. It is attritional. It is difficult. They're fighting over every single tree line there, and the Russians are counterattacking. But as I saw written somewhere else, what the Ukrainians do is they take the ground and they wait for the Russian counterattacks, and they soak up the counterattacks, and then go again, and they soak it up and go again, and that just ends up attriting the Russian forces. I just want to go back to Starominivka. Just to say from another P-Star 1-1 here, this is back to the east. It seems Russians are going to attempt a local counterattack towards Staromayorska using the units of the 5th Tank Brigade, while at the same time trying to strengthen the flanks towards Pryutny. I guess Ukrainian advance will resume when all the Russian attempts to regain previously lost positions will fail. So this is exactly what I was just talking about. Somehow it is advantageous for Ukraine since they decided to uncover themselves by counterattacking. And that's the point. So, while the Ukrainians have been taking an operational break in the Staromayorsk area, that gives the Russians, the opportunity to counterattack. But that's fine. You go and counterattack. We then know where you are. We can take you out and attrit your forces, so that when we go to attack ourselves, you are in a worse position than you previously were. And then coming across to Piatycheki, where there's kind of positional fighting, not a lot of change there. It's worth noting this. So this is Zerebianki at the moment. It is probably not a good place to hang out. So that is being sort of routinely hammered by Ukrainian artillery. And there you go. So moving then down to Kherson and the Dnipro River here, just to mention what Humenyuk says. Every time the enemy tries to reconnoiter what is happening on the left bank, they send their sabotage and reconnaissance groups on boats. Over the past day, they've lost 7 such boats. That is, every time an enemy group goes on a mission, it never returns. Really a big talk there from Natalia Humenyuk for the Southern District Operational or Southern Operational Command there, saying that basically, we're taking out their boats every time they move. We just take them out. Now, obviously, that's a propagandistic position. That's a job to kind of sell you the narrative, but they seem to be far more accurate than the Russians when communicating what's going on. Right, moving on to military aid here. We as a team have chosen the priorities. So this is exactly what I was talking about the other day, but gives you the exact order of what their preferences or focuses are going to be in terms of getting airframes. This is Yuri Ichnaut saying, we as a team have chosen the priorities. Our first priority is undoubtedly F-16. Second place, the team, I stress that, has chosen the Gripen. In third place, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the UK plane, European plane, and the Rafale, French Rafale is in fourth place. So that's what they want in that order. And those will be the focuses. David D says, and take what he says with a pinch of salt, I'm getting intel that at least 4 countries are quietly clearing out stocks of old Cold War gear, and at some point the numbers may be released to Ukraine, and it will be shocking what was handed over and not publicized. If you notice lots of Soviet-era gear showing up in Ukraine with 100% new paint jobs, that's for a reason. And someone says here, we know the Serbians have been giving stuff without a lot of announcing, obviously because they're kind of on side with the Russians, but they appear to be giving some Soviet-era stuff to Ukraine. So the question is, who else? Of the former Soviet bloc countries that aren't very forthcoming without aid, Romania almost certainly, Bulgaria and Slovenia may be one of the other nations around there. So I imagine there's some backfilling going on. In fact, speaking of which, I'll probably bring this to the fore now. Where was it? No, it's not that one. It is... oh no, I've got it in for tomorrow. I'm sure, because I'd already got some stuff. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So I'll bring that in now. So David D was talking about Soviet-era gear being sent to Ukraine. Now, this was publicly announced. This was the 100 Bulgarian Soviet-era APCs that they're giving to Ukraine. Well, actually, the US State Department has made a determination approving a possible foreign military sale to Bulgaria of Stryker vehicles related and related equipment for an estimated cost of $1.5 billion. When you talk about American aid and a cost of American aid, and I'm going to have an extra on that later today, and you're moaning that America's spending too much, they are also getting in some very big deals that are going to support their own military-industrial complex. Now, you complain about it all about being a military-industrial complex, but from a purely economic point of view, they've just sold $1.5 billion worth of kit to Bulgaria because they've kind of persuaded Bulgaria to give a load of Soviet equipment to Ukraine. So the whole kind of war effort is about balancing sheets. So on the one hand, we're giving a bunch of equipment here, and that might be costing us. But on the other hand, we're getting loads of business deals in, and that will be giving us tax incomes and so on and so forth, and employment, and et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, there's a list of what Bulgaria, I think, are looking at getting. A big old shopping list there. So, USA will send the first shells with depleted uranium to Ukraine. This might be controversial for some, but it's not really. I mean, it's just what they fire out out of their tanks, and the UK has already given Ukraine depleted uranium shells that are used for the Challenger tanks. And Russia, spat the dummy about that, but of course they've used them themselves. So, you've got there's a TASS article from 2018 that very clearly says we have got no problem with depleted uranium shell usage. So there you go. The Ukrainian military will receive Slinger anti-drone systems manufactured by Australian company Electro-Optic Systems. This was announced by their vice president. According to the executive vice president, Ukraine will receive 110 systems that will be equipped with M113 and other 50 systems with a company called Praktika. They will be installed on the Bushmaster APC. The contract value is about $175 million. So the Australians doing well out of getting some equipment to Ukraine. And that seems, I understand that as being on Bushmaster. The M113, I don't know if that means will be equipped with M113, and I think that's a translation issue there. I think that is these systems will go on to some M113s as well as Bushmasters and 50 other systems, but we'll see. Right, Denmark plans to increase assistance to Ukraine up to 200 million euros in 2024. Such a proposal is contained in the finance law of 2024. So thank you very much to Denmark. They're huge supporters. Those geographically local nations are obviously big supporters because it's in their own interest to be so as well. Okay, Danilov has said Ukraine will be able to hit the enemy targets at a distance of 1,500 kilometers. So yesterday we had announcements of 700 kilometers. Ukraine has been working on its own missile program and drones for a long time. So hitting targets on Russian territory that are located even 1,500 miles away is no longer a problem. Wow. And then this is a field hospital that Germany has given to Ukraine. So when you see something like this, you think, okay, but what about tanks and stuff? This is massively important, and what a field hospital this is. So this is insanely high quality stuff. That, I mean, if that's to be truthful and a representation of what that is, then that is massive for a field hospital to be given to Ukraine. That's a really, really big piece of equipment or network of equipment. Right, moving on to geopolitical stuff now. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit because I have to take my kid back out to do another sporting engagement. So Georgia's ruling party begins an impeachment proceeding against the president over her trip to Europe. This makes me really sad and really angry. And Georgia is just a vassal state of Russia at the moment. The Georgian Dream Party has become, although it kind of originally had pro-EU stance, it is basically just doing the bidding of the Kremlin. I remember New World Economics some time back saying, "Oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like, Georgian Dream is a pro-EU party, and blah blah blah." And he seems to be positioning that narrative that actually Georgia are not pro-Russia. It's like, no, you need to look at actually what Georgia Dream have been saying and what their actions are, and understand a little bit more nuance there. And and this is just another example of where they are positioned. So on the 31st, August 31st, Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili met in Germany with the German counterpart Frank-Walter Steinmeier. I mean, this is normal political stuff, right? For this, the ruling party of Georgia accused the president of violating the constitution. The day before, Zurabishvili announced that she was starting meetings with European politicians in support of Georgia's EU candidate status. So they do have candidate status. Georgia Dream's official position is pro-EU, except it's not. So what do they do? The government responded by banning Zurabishvili from visiting Germany and 9 other countries, including Ukraine. Hashtag, that ain't liberty. Hashtag, you guys suck. This annoys me because it's just so counterproductive. It's just so authoritarian. Really horrible story, this. Okay, in Germany, a man threw a 10-year-old boy off a bridge because he spoke the Ukrainian language. In the German town of Einbeck, several Ukrainian children were playing near a bridge when an unknown man began to complain that they were speaking Ukrainian. He ordered them to speak in Russian, so this is not a German by the looks of it, it's a Russian, and then said that Ukraine started the war. According to the prosecutor's office, a man threw the 10-year-old boy over the bridge railing into the canal. The child hit the iron beams and suffered injuries to his head and left leg. While the boy was lying in the canal, the man threw a glass bottle at him, which hit the child's right shoulder. After that, the unknown man left. The children went and warned their parents. According to the representative, the prosecutor's office, the boy was not seriously injured. He was treated in a hospital and then released. The prosecutor considers the attack, which took place on Saturday, last Saturday, to be politically motivated, and the police are looking for the guy and witnesses to the incident. So that's another reflection of some of the tensions, but this time it isn't from indigenous populations. It appears to be from a Russian to a Ukrainian. Okay, India cuts purchases of Russian oil. Wow, this is going to hurt. Preferring cheaper supplies from the Middle East. So this will bring down Russian oil prices, which will then reduce their income from oil sales. This is not good news for Russia. In July, India imported 2.1 million barrels per day. In August, only 1.6 million. This is the lowest figure since January. That is going to hurt the Russians. 2 more merchant ships have left the Ukrainian ports through the Navy corridor, so they're hugging the coast down to the Bosphorus Straits. 2 ships have left for the Pivdeny port in Odessa through the corridor organised by the Ukrainian Navy, the Infrastructure Ministry has announced. And finally, and I know some of you hate me having a go at Elon Musk and you think it's just my liberal biases, but do you know what? The EU has found that Musk's new Twitter policy has contributed to the spread of Russian propaganda. Okay, during 2022, says Washington Post, the audience and reach of Moscow-orientated social media accounts grew significantly across Europe. Preliminary analysis suggests that the reach and influence of Kremlin-backed accounts increased further in the first half of 2023, in particular due to the erosion of security standards on Twitter, and including, as we know from leaked coding, from the actual coding of Twitter that preferentially or discriminates against Ukrainian news, pro-Ukrainian news. It's just, so anyway, yeah, if you don't believe me because, hey, I'm some kind of wishy-washy liberal, then do you know what? An analysis has been done and has found that Musk's Twitter is helping the spread of Russian propaganda. Anyway, I'll leave it on that. You guys can argue it out in the threads below. Thank you so much. Please take care. Like, subscribe, and share, and I'll speak to you hopefully later. It's going to be a bit of a funky day.